AZ. I'm your co-host, Jim Marshall, a.k.a. Basebald. Alongside me is Bob Aries, a.k.a. Kingpin. We are live on YouTube every Saturday at 8 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. We'll talk all Arizona sports, and we'll mix in some national news as well. How's it going today, Bob?
Hey, how you doing, Jim? Jim, there's a lot of interesting sports news this week, and I can't wait to talk about it.
Yeah, the Suns, we talked last week. We'll give you a little overview on the sports. Suns had their press conference yesterday with Mike Budenholzer.
Yep.
It was good to see 91-year-old Al McCoy doing
He
the
came out.
announcing.
He
Came
actually
out
came
and
out.
announced Mike Budenholzer. Yeah, so it's. I watched the press conference live yesterday during work, lunch at noon, and they called the press conference at noon, so I was able to chime in and take a look at it. They were actually fielding questions from people online, but there were so many, people, obviously all the team people that cover them and on a regular basis, that so they had the questions there. But it was good to see Al out there, and James Jones was out there, and very emotional when he began to talk about his dad and growing up in Holbrook, Arizona. Like we mentioned last week, if a lot of people don't know, his dad, Vince, was a legendary high school coach and won many state titles in Holbrook. His dad, I believe he said, was 94, and his dad was down for the interview for the introduction and everything. So he, talked about this was his dream job, and this is exactly everything he wanted to do. He also talked about what it's going to take to win. James Jones reiterated that the big three are staying, so that kind of probably put him at ease. But he mentioned that, they need a point guard if they want to advance in the playoffs. But he also said that they could get by without having a point guard. Well, let's stress it right now. This
Yeah.
team needs a point guard. If this team wants to advance, they have to have a point guard. So we'll talk more about that.
Yeah.
Last
Well,
night, the Diamondbacks opened up against the Tigers, a three-game home
they
series.
did really good last night, didn't they?
Tariq Skubal was on the mound, and that guy is lights out. The
And
Tigers have been
he's a local kid, right?
so he's did he go to Central Arizona? You'll have to pop it up on the internet. But the Tigers have been
I
waiting
I thought
for
I
him.
thought he was I thought he was a local kid that
You're thinking Spencer Torkelson from ASU, the first
yes,
baseman.
yes. Okay.
Yeah, Tariq
Yep.
Skubal was well. He is from Kingman, Arizona. I'm sorry, Tariq Skubal was. He went to Seattle University, and then he was drafted by
Okay.
the Diamondbacks in 2017, but he decided to return to Seattle. Yes, you are 100% correct on that. He went to Kingman Academy of Learning in Kingman, Arizona. And I remember him enrolling at Seattle University. He said, ASU, U of A, Grand Canyon, they didn't offer him anything. He was thinking about going the junior college route, Central Arizona, which is a great junior college baseball school, but he ended up going to Seattle University. And the Tigers have been waiting for him to really show up. He battled some injuries, and I'll tell you what, he was lights out last night. He ended up with a one-hitter. He had a no-hitter going through 5 innings, 6 strikeouts, and he hit 100 miles an hour on several occasions. So I thought that game last night with Ryan Nelson was going to be a challenge. The key for the Diamondbacks, and we'll jump into the Cardinals as well as we do the overview, they have to win Saturday and Sunday if they want to stay competitive. But now the question is, Ryan Nelson had a real tough outing. His ERA is well over 6. Did not look
Yeah.
good last night at all. I
Yeah,
don't
and
know.
we have a lot of baseball stuff to talk about, and we'll get into
Yes.
that because I also there's a few things that I want to talk about. The number of injuries this year across baseball is incredible, right? I do want to talk about Kyle Hendricks, who I think is done. He is done, but they haven't DFA'd him as far as I know as of yet, but he should be. So there's a number of things that we need to talk about. Of course, I touch upon all of our Arizona sports first.
Yeah. So the Cardinals' schedule came out, and so
How's it look? How's it look?
Well, yeah. So my question for you was, are you one of these guys that looks at the schedule and maps out how many wins you think the team is going to have? You're a Bears fan. Did you go on and look at the Bears schedule and say,
I have
hey,
not I have not looked at the Bears schedule. I am only uh the only thing I want to see is I want this the preseason games to start already because I want to see a little bit of Caleb Williams, and we I think we're going to see a lot of him. I think we're going to see more of him in preseason this year because I think they're going to want to get him into the mix quick because he is your starter.
we
Period.
could spend the next 10 minutes or so talking a little bit about, what's going on in the NFL and the schedule. I'm sure you probably heard Netflix is now home to NFL games on Christmas Day. So the only way for you to watch the
If you,
NFL on Christmas Day is you're going to have Netflix. They're going to be
I
the
have,
global home of the NFL's two Christmas Day marquee games, and they're going to do it in
luckily I have it.
2025 and 2026. So they're going to be streaming at least one holiday game a year as part of the three-season deal. Goes back to baseball signed. They wanted $30 million from Peacock, and Peacock said no. So they've signed a deal with Roku to do the Sunday games. NBA is jumping from TNT to NBC, which means the games are going to be streamed on Peacock. So, for example, you might have a marquee game. Let's just say, for example, the Lakers are playing the Celtics. That
Yep.
game is going to be on Peacock. Maybe the Clippers are going to play the Knicks. That game is going to be on NBC. Where does it end? Where does it end for people? So there was I can't remember it now. I don't know if it was on Deadspin Sports or TMZ. I don't know which one it is. I don't want to credit one over the other. But the person sat down and to watch all the NFL games, including streaming on YouTube, that YouTube TV that's doing it. It's going to cost you almost $2,000 a year to watch the games. Now, you get for example, us living in Phoenix, we will always get the Cardinals on over the air TV. But the problem is if you stream with one of the big streamers, say
Yeah.
Fubo or Dish Network, you don't get the local channels. So you have to have an antenna in order to watch the games. Or you're subscribing to ESPN and then it'll be, streamed on ESPN through there.
Yeah.
Baseball's going through the same problem. The regional sports network, all these teams that have to be taken over by MLB. Hockey went through the problem, but hockey finally figured out, we're the number 4 sport, but we're still continuing to grow. We're going to do some over the air, and we can refer to our former Coyotes. They were on over the air TV. Now, granted, the money is not there, but where does it end? When consumers are starting to say, we're not paying for this anymore, and the NFL needs to realize that.
Yeah. Well, there was a story that came out this week, and they're pricing people out of watching their sports. There was a big article that came out about a week ago about a Cubs fan and the Marquee Network, how they actually priced him out of watching. He's a low income guy, and from what I understand, and I don't know how true this is. I mean, I was only told by a friend, and so I didn't actually verify it. That if you wanted to get esports network uh, through your cable package, that it was like $20 a month. That's a lot of money for a lot of people.
That is a lot. That
They don't
it
have,
is.
especially when your groceries have gone up like 50%, right? I mean, you got to eat before you're going to watch the Cubs. And,
Right.
and one of the things that I've noticed, and you've been to Chase Field this year, I have not, but I've been watching the Chicago Cubs, who really every year have sold out every game. And I've been watching the Cubs games myself, and I've been looking in the stands, and there are a lot of empty seats. Now, have they priced fans out of the game already?
And I think that's true with all the four major sports. The NFL started this. So marquee games. You're seeing marquee games. We can refer to the Diamondbacks. The Yankees are coming to town. The Dodgers with Shohei Ohtani. The Phillies. We got Bryce Harper. Maybe the Angels when Mike Trout, if he's healthy. The tickets are prorated, so they cost a little bit more. You have the Marlins. You have the Tigers. Those tickets are going to be a little more reasonably priced. Now, yes, for the 10th or 11th year in a row, the Diamondbacks have the cheapest ticket prices, but it is starting to price everybody out. And like you said, costing $20 a month in order to watch the Diamondback games on satellite, streaming, whatever you want to call it, it's $99 a year. That's a lot of money for people when you're
Yep.
talking, like you said, energy costs and food costs. And, you figure, well, the month of July, I'm not going to be here. Now, this is the first year that the Diamondbacks have offered monthly. So, say, for example, you're taking the whole month of July off. So, you're saving a little bit of money there. But it's getting to the point people can't afford it. Then, if you look at, like you were talking about, Chicago. So, if you live in Iowa, you
Yep.
don't get to watch the Brewers. You don't get to watch the Cardinals. You don't get to watch the Cubs. You don't get to watch the White Sox. You don't get to watch the Twins. You don't get to watch the Royals because the
Yeah.
regional sports network is blocking these out. How is baseball or even the NFL, even basketball, going to grow the game if you can't watch these on over the air TV or offer it at a reasonable price?
Right. My buddy Juan Aguilar out of Chicago was talking to him the other day, and he had actually mentioned the same thing. As a matter of fact, I think we'll have him on as a guest at some point. He's actually a sports handicapper, and the thing is, he talked about the same thing. He said, "Listen, I grew up in the era where everything was free and on TV," and he said, "I really like what the Suns own done, where he's putting the games and he's increasing the brand awareness of the Phoenix Suns, and not every team has done that." And Matt Ishbia has done a great job of coming in and saying, "No, I want our people, and I want the people from Arizona and Phoenix to be able to see the Suns."
Yeah. Well, it got to the point where my wife and I we were talking. We put an antenna. We put it in the attic, but I mean, we did over the air TV. At the time, the Coyotes they did the smart thing and their viewership went way up. Now we didn't know that Alex Murillo was going to pull the rug under everybody and take his
Yep.
$1 billion and move. Suns, you're right. You can watch the Suns and you can watch the Mercury.
Yep.
Cardinals are always going to be on over the air TV. Everybody was talking about the Diamondbacks. Why didn't the Diamondbacks do it? Well, I have a little insight on that. The Diamondbacks were negotiating with a couple of TV stations over the air TV. The negotiations were going back and forth, and you have to understand, we don't know the insides of how it works.
Right.
You had to go through Major League Baseball. You had to go through the TV station. You had to go through the Diamondbacks. You have to go through all that legal mumbo jumbo. There was talk that they were going to do the Sunday games on over the air TV, and they were also going to pick, maybe a Tuesday night game or a Thursday night game that was going to be on over the air TV. Part of it is probably the Diamondbacks waited too long to get it started, and the other part was Major League Baseball wasn't ready. So I know for some people it bothers them that they have to pay the $99. It is a lot of money, and you have to budget everything, and that's what it came down to. I think there is a plan for next year that you're probably going to see some on over-the-air TV. But it was kind of a slap in the face that you just went to the World Series. You're the NL West NL West champions, and you go to the World Series, and then you decide you're going to charge $100 to watch all their games. I think you and I had mentioned this a couple of weeks ago. It used to be people would tell you, well, if you want to watch, college football and you want to watch the Diamondbacks and you want to watch the Suns, you better go out and get yourself DirecTV and Dish Network and all these
That's
other
right.
ones. So back in the 90s and the early 2000s, everybody started doing that. And then they
Yep.
just kept raising the cost of everything. And everybody said,
Yep.
we need to stop. Then streaming became available. And I can give you an example. We had Hulu and we had it for 1 year, and it went up 4 times in 1 year, and we said no more. So that's
I've
everybody is
got the right. You're right. You're right. That has gone up. And that's the cheap Hulu, right? The cheap Hulu with the commercials.
yes, Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, now
You're
it's
right.
gotten to the point Amazon charges you to watch. You're paying for Amazon Prime, $130, 150, whatever it costs a year. Now
Right.
you have to watch commercials on there, and they say, "Well, pay us a little bit more, and it's commercial free."
Yeah.
Thursday night football games, unless you have IPTV like you do, you're not going to see the games. How many people have the capability of getting it? But you're still paying an amount to watch IPTV. You're still paying an amount to watch streaming TV. So everybody says, well, yeah, you can go online and you can watch it. Not a lot of people want to watch a game on their phone or on the computer. It's like everybody says,
That's
oh,
right.
the NFL, if you pay $20, you get every game, but you can only watch it on your phone. Nobody wants to do that
Right.
on a Sunday afternoon. That's why the NFL was so successful. On Sundays, you sat down after a long week, whether you went to school, you went to work, whatever, and you watched the games. Now there's just too much football. It's on Monday, it's on Thursday. They're talking the Christmas games on Wednesday. They do Saturday games. It's wearing everybody out. They said, "Oh, we need more football." They put the UFL on. Are you even watching the UFL?
No.
So that goes
I
to
will
tell you,
not. That to me is garbage. I think I'd rather go out and watch a Pop Warner football team play. The kids run around than watch those
yeah.
guys.
And
I,
and we
I I'm not turning it on. There's about 30 people in the stands. Maybe I'm wrong. There might be 31. But I'm not watching it. Right? I'm not
right,
turning it on. I'm not wasting that time in my life to watch that garbage. Sorry.
right. And for
And
us,
and you know what? I hate to say it this way because we do cover the Rattlers,
that's
right?
and I was
But they're not very exciting either to watch.
no, but
And
and
they're
that's what
not
I was
like they're not the way they used to be.
right. And I was going to mention for us, it's a little different because we have the indoor football. And you're right, it's not. It's different than the arena ball. I mean, it's still indoor football, but the rules are different. And right,
Yep.
and we have. But no, people are not attending the games. You're seeing 6,000 people, 8,000. I think the biggest crowd they had was in Jacksonville, was it, or maybe Philadelphia, Birmingham, one of the, like 11,000. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's getting to the point where people are picking and choosing. But that's almost anything. Going to the movies now, it has become quite a bit of a challenge. They have to charge more because everything went up, and everybody's waiting to stream the movies online. So that's
Yeah.
so the professional sports are going to have to really figure out what the next avenue is going to be. Salaries keep going up, and people are not attending the games, and they're not watching the games.
I was going to say the same thing. Salaries are going up every year. The minimum goes up every year. I think the minimum today, and it's kind of funny, and I will tell the story, but I think the minimum today is 720,000 for a guy who's just been called up from the minors. You are going to make $720,000, which of course is a lot of money. The thing is, I have to tell the story because years ago, I had a Cubs player live with my family. Name is Pete Lecoq. So, Pete, if you're out there, I haven't seen you in years. How are you, man? The thing is, I remember when he came home one day, this was during the off season, and he came back to the house, and he goes, I just negotiated my contract. I just negotiated my contract with PK Wrigley. I'm gonna make $18,000 next year. And of course, I'm talking about in the 70s, right? Mid 70s. And the thing is, here we are, like, what is it? Well, my God, I
50,
can't believe it. It's hard to
50
believe it's
years.
50 years ago, but
Yeah,
now it's $720,000. And
right,
every year it'll go up, and don't be surprised here, it's $735,000.
right. And then you factor in all the superstars and what they're paying. The Diamondbacks used to be able to go get a ticket for $20 and sit in the out in the bleachers. I think it's 30 now. They still have the cheapest. And down the first baseline, third baseline wasn't bad. I think it was $35. It's up to 60.
Yeah,
So is it because the team won last year? Well, you could probably say a little bit of that is, but a little bit is you have to pay these salaries. I mean,
right.
even going, that's the first thing they talked about when Otani signed with the Dodgers. Their tickets went up 13%. Concessions went up 23%. Is supply and
Yeah.
demand? Probably part of it is, but then the
Yeah.
cost of eating has gone up as well. So yeah, where is it going to stop? So that's sports
Right.
has a
And you're right, right. And ticket prices have gone wild. I want to know because I know last year the World Series you actually had sat in the stands for some games, and I was wondering, how much were those tickets? Your seats weren't bad; they were on the third base side. I remember that. But how much? Do you remember what the going
I
rate
don't
was for those
I
tickets
don't
there?
remember what they were, but I believe I mean they were it was a pretty chunk of change.
Three
So
hundred,
it's
400 bucks
yeah,
face
and that
value,
yeah,
maybe.
yep, it was
And
yeah.
then, of
So
course, they were reselling those ticket vendors, and of course, I heard prices as high as $3,000 to $4,000.
right, and that's yeah, that's well, and that's you can and we'll a couple more minutes on here, and then we'll jump over to the Suns.
Yeah,
The Cardinals are part of this. They haven't done it yet, but they will. There are some teams in the NFL, and I know the NBA. It's called seat licensing, and you have had season tickets in the same seats for years, but now they charge you a seat licensing because if you're a business and you want those seats, you can outprice an individual and just say that's where you want. But if you have the seat licensing, then they can't do that. So tack that on. So the Cardinals
yeah,
were talking about that they've sold the whole lower bowl this year. There is some excitement, second year with the coach. They got a good draft. They think this is Kyler Murray's make or break year. We'll talk about that later. But the price of the tickets went up. When I had season tickets, the tickets would go up every year. I have heard some people's tickets because every year they do restructuring. They move some people from the end zones into the lower bowl over into the corners. Some people said their tickets went up as 30%, and that's just not the
wow,
Cardinals. That's everywhere else. The Bears,
yeah,
I saw a thing where the Bears, a guy said he had season tickets in the same location in the north end zone, and his tickets went up 22%. And he said he used to have four tickets. He's had to cut them down to two now because he just
yeah,
can't afford it. So
right,
that's where, but the money is coming from somewhere because you're paying all these guys. Now, we did hear reports last year that the Padres had to take out a loan to pay the last month of their year to pay all their,
right.
structuring on the building and all that stuff. So maybe
50,
that's
50 million bucks, $50 million
right. So
loan. Yep,
that's real interesting. So we'll have to see where it's going to go. It's just going to continue to line. Now, like you said, you see the Suns with PayPal and Dimebacks with Avnet, and all these teams that they have that have the advertising on here, and that's where now you're having the advertisers. The companies pay for that. Well, in the end, who's paying for that? We are, because we're the consumer. And when we go to buy the goods, it's costing more. So
right.
yeah, that we could spend a whole segment on sports and money.
Yeah,
So
sports and economics, that's for sure.
sports and economics.
Yep,
So let's talk a little bit about the Suns. We talked about Mike Budenholzer was introduced as 22nd head coach in the Suns history, going on 55 years, 56 years that the Suns have been an organization. They came out in August of '68. I always tell the story. We moved out from New York when I was 5 in August of '68 because the Suns became a franchise. That's why I just tell everybody we moved out here.
uh,
Didn't want to say my dad was transferred with General Electric to Honeywell, but say for the Suns. So, but former two-time coach of the year, won an NBA championship against the Suns when he was with the Bucks, Mike Budenholzer. So we talk about it's going to come down to a point guard. The big three are supposedly staying. We've said this before. Kevin Durant is one of the greatest basketball players. He really has nothing left to prove. I mean, he wins
right.
another championship, big deal. So he goes from maybe the 50th greatest player to maybe the 40th, or the
Yeah,
40th to the 30th. He's
yeah,
already set his career in stone. I'm not saying that he's not a leader. He's just not a vocal guy that likes
right.
to do it. And I saw a big decrease in Devin Booker this year. I think he waited for Bradley Beal and Durant to be the spokespeople for the team. No, it's got to be him if this team wants to succeed.
That's right. That's right. He was really your face of the franchise,
Yes.
and
Now there are some
that
point. Go ahead.
Mm-mm.
There are some point guards out there, but and I'll give you a list of a few names. Patrick Beverly, I'm going to say no right now. Can't stand the Suns. Suns fans don't want him either. Cameron Payne, who was out here before when they had Cam Payne and Cam Johnson. Mikal Bridges. Uh,
Right.
can he do it full time? Not sure. Russell Westbrook, no thank you. He and Kevin Durant would never get along. And I don't think he and Devin Booker would get along. Chris Dunn, Dennis Smith, guys that maybe you could look at. Jose Alvarado is a unique situation. He's got a team option. He's a guy that you could look at. Monty Morris and Aaron Holiday. Those are some other guys that are growing. But can they come in and be able to realize that I have to run the point? I got to let the big three do what they want to do, and then maybe have just be the guard, just be the quiet leader of the team, and just do it. That's what the point guard is going to really need. And supposedly that's what Budenholzer can do. He knows how to work with superstars. My only question about Budenholzer is what happened in Milwaukee? You won a championship, and a year later you're blown out. What happened? You not get along with the players? I know they changed a little bit, brought in some different players, and maybe he saw the writing on the wall and, just decided it was time to move on. So it will be an interesting offseason for the Suns. You got to remember, you got two players that are going to be playing in the Olympics. How ready they'll be ready to play, but are they going to be worn out when the season starts?
Yeah. Yeah. And then we've got the Mercury. So
Mercury, yeah. Well, they got some bad news the other day with Brittany Griner.
what happened? I
Uh,
didn't even hear about it.
Stress fracture in her foot, broken,
Oh,
broken foot.
she's done.
So
She's done probably for
I
the
don't.
year. I mean, the year
I,
doesn't last very long in that league. What
yeah,
do they play? How many
I
games do they
really
play?
don't.
30 some odd games?
Well, tonight, yes, tonight is their first home game. She's out indefinitely. That's all that they've said, and it really hasn't been updated since Wednesday. Um, she obviously missed the United. Tonight is their home opener, so they played a pretty good game against the Aces the other day. Uh, they it's going to take a few games. You want them to stay competitive. New coach, new atmosphere. I think they went to the line 9 times, and the Aces went to the line 25 times. I think that's going to tell you they lost by 9. So do you want to say it was? But hopefully they're still going to be competitive. A lot of excitement because you have the All-Star game coming and everything. So we'll see what the home opener is. I'm interested to see what the attendance will be tonight. Probably be close to a sellout, but then as the season moves on, if they're struggling, they'll probably be back to 7,000 and 8,000 fans.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, what else we got going? We got the Rising. We haven't really been keeping up with the Rising per se this year, but we do promise we will get out there at some point.
Yeah, we got the Rising and the Rattlers, and college baseball's wrapping up. U of A, Grand Canyon, ASU. Tonight's the final game. Grand Canyon most likely will be in a regional. U of A was leading the Pac-12, and all they had to do was win one game against Oregon State. They have a 3-game series. They've lost both of them right now. So
Wow.
right now, Oregon State is leading the Pac. It's really the Pac-11. Final season, obviously, for the Pac as it winds down. U of A wins tonight. They'll win the Pac-11 championship. If they lose, it'll be Oregon State. ASU plays UNLV. I'll be out there tonight. ASU, it's going to be interesting. If they win, they'll probably have to win a couple of games in the Pac-12 tournament to get into a regional. I think that was on Willie Bloomquist's list, was to get into the regional. Comes down to the same thing with ASU every year. They just don't have the pitching. They got some hitting. Ryan Campos is the real deal, and you're going to hear about this guy when he gets drafted. This guy is a Major League Baseball player, and just remember the name, Ryan Campos. So, yeah, there's still a lot of sports going on. You and I are talking about heading out to the rookie leagues. Go out to the
Yeah.
stadiums and watch the rookie leagues. The games are free. People go out there and watch. Diamondbacks have 2 sets of teams out there. You'll see the Dodgers are out there, the Giants are out there, the Padres. Pretty much all the spring training teams, they play at the spring
And,
training site.
and is there a schedule that let's viewers can
Yeah,
go and
there is.
see?
Yeah, there is a schedule. Just watch a minor league baseball, MILB, and then you just type it. It's called the Complex League. I'll always call it the Rookie League. But if you just go out to milb.com and then you can look up, the teams, the schedules, and it'll tell you where it is. So like they said, I call it the rookie leagues, and they call it where the teams play the complex league. So the Dodgers are playing the A's in a 2 o'clock game. Most of the games are day games on Saturday. During the night, they'll play games during the night. So they have some good, and that's where you see Major League Baseball is listed as the top 30 rookie prospects. You normally see 5 or 6 guys that are out there. So if you want to see some baseball, it doesn't cost you a lot, which is basically it's free. You need to head out to the spring training sites. And we know, Bob, the warm weather's coming, but it's still pretty nice when that sun goes down with the dry weather, and it's actually pretty tolerable. So take yourself a little chestful of water out there and have a good time.
It is nice at night. It's still, it's warm, but it's great. I can at least take the dog outside without frying.
And have the dog's paws on the sidewalk. So yeah. So let's jump into the NFL. We talked about it, with Netflix taking over the Christmas games, but the NFL released its schedule. I already asked you, are one of those guys that look at the schedule and you said no. Neither am I.
You know what? I really look at, and I do look at it baseball, but just for a second, I'll just make this comment and we'll continue on with football. In the beginning of the year, when the sports books come out with the under/over of what team will win in games, I will usually look at that and say, nah, because I think that I forgot what the Dodgers were at. It was like 95 games or something, and I'm going, nah, they'll be over that. I don't even know what they did last night. I don't know if they lost, won. It doesn't really matter. But that team is just stacked, And I used to look at very closely what the Diamondbacks would say. And it was like last year, and I'm going, no, they're going to be over that. This year, I don't know what the heck. But let's go on to football. Sorry, I just had to throw that in.
That's all right. We'll finish up when we talk Diamondbacks. We'll finish because we got a couple of things coming up. So yeah, so I'm not one of these guys either that looks at the schedule, but listening to the local sports talk out here, and then listen to the prognosticators or the pundits or like you said, the guys that predict. I saw anywhere for the Cardinals winning 13 games. A few of them had them winning 12 games. I saw some winning 4 games, winning 5 games, winning 7 games, winning 8 games. If you're basing it on last year's schedule, how can you do that? The Cardinals are probably looking at least 15 different players this year. Let's bring up the Bears. The Bears are going to have multiple new players this year.
Oh, yeah.
No schedule. You can't compare it to last year's schedules. They're saying, oh, when they're playing Buffalo early, so they miss all the bad weather. Look what they did when they beat Pittsburgh and Philadelphia last year. Both of those teams were dynamite teams, and the Cardinals went in and beat them. We could go into Buffalo first week of the year and we could beat the Bills because we don't have to worry about playing in the weather. Then we come home for 3 straight home games. Commanders, come on, we're going after Jaden Daniels. He's not going to be. You can't base it on that. Let me bring up the Bears real quick.
And I have to hit upon that because you said the Cardinals have 3 straight home games. The Cardinals were horseshit last year at home. So, we don't have any idea what they're going to be like. And, I'll let you finish your thought, but they need a frickin' quarterback because I do not believe in Kyler Murray.
Well, they're building an offensive line around him. I think, that they realize that, I don't want to use the word they're stuck with him, but they're stuck with him. And now they're building up the offensive line, got a good tight end, drafted another tight end. They've got 3 quality blocking tight ends. So they have him. And they realize they put all the money in with him.
They can put the offensive line in front of this guy. This guy, as far as I'm concerned, has not been the same since that year when were they 7-0, 8-0, and he
Right.
threw the interception in the end zone on the last play, basically, of the game to Green Bay, and he hasn't had his confidence since then. And listen, they can put that offensive line around him. The guy's a midget. They can't add another foot to his freaking height.
No, and I think that and I'm with you. They realize that they have, and they're going to try to build, and they're going to go with this year. I think this is a make or break year for him. If he
Yeah,
does not perform, for me, and we haven't even seen. I haven't looked at the schedule. We haven't seen who's making the team. For me, in order to be successful, this team has to win 10 games, and they have to get into the playoffs. For
yeah,
if then it's not a successful season, then you have to really consider, is the quarterback a problem? Now, if he's playing great and they have a devastating injury, maybe on the defense, or maybe something happens, then maybe I'm willing to give. But it's going to come down to what kind of a performance is he putting up. They're giving him a line. They're giving him the tight ends. Granted, they still need a little help with receivers, but you can find receivers. They're a dime a dozen. They really
yeah.
are. If they can fit into the offense, it doesn't. Marvin Harrison might struggle a couple of games, but I expect him to maybe really jump on and show off a little bit. But we'll talk more as the Cardinals, as the camp goes. For me, I was
Right.
going to talk to you about the Bears a little bit. They're
Mhm.
calling it one of the most highly anticipated seasons ever. Don't they say that every year in Chicago?
No,
Or is that just or it's okay? So
no. They really don't. Um, I I don't think Bears fans really were as high on Justin Fields, and there was another number one pick, right?
right,
Um, he just, you know, even though the sports radio in Chicago was like behind this guy, and then of course then they started bashing the guy. It's kind of funny. He's not even going to be a starting quarterback with Pittsburgh because Russell
right.
Wilson basically has the job already and has been given the job. So he's going in as a backup. But I I don't think that it's ever been that way of that I can remember of highly anticipated. I think this year with the players that they picked up, and of course a Caleb Williams. Um, the only thing I can say is time will tell, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
but
you only have 3 games in preseason now, so you
right.
know what are they going to do? They'll play them a quarter of the first game, all right, and then do you start playing them 2 quarters the second game and 3 quarters the third?
Most
And do they have defensive line to protect him?
correct, and that's what it. Yeah, that's what I think. Yeah, and we won't know till we see. He'll probably, like you said, probably play one quarter. The second game is now the big game that pro, he will probably play 2 quarters. You won't even see him in the third game.
Probably
He
not. You're
he
probably
probably will
right.
miss. But they have an interesting schedule.
I
They
don't even know who I don't even know who they're playing.
well
Besides
they open
besides
they
Green Bay, Detroit, and Minnesota.
Minnesota. They start 3 straight games against the AFC South. They host the Tennessee Titans on Sunday, and then they go to the Texans on Sunday Night Football, and then they travel to Indianapolis on Sunday. So they have 3 straight games against the South. So it looks like the AFC and the AFC South will be playing the NFC North this year.
And those
So yeah,
Titans
it's
and those Texans are a much better team now with since they got their quarterback into the mix.
I know. Remember, the Card. Everybody was saying, the Cardinals stole the Texans draft because we're going to get two picks in the top 10 when they ended up with what, the 22nd pick, because the Texans, they really surprised everybody. So yeah, as camps get, football, we talk year round. You always talk football year round. As camps get closer, we'll pay a little more attention to the Bears, pay a little more attention to the Cardinals, some of the other teams that are, expected to repeat. And there's always going to be somebody that's going to surprise everybody.
Yeah, and I did want to I know we're probably going to transition back to baseball because that's the main season the way I look at it we're in right now. but the injuries, I had brought that up. There have been, I mean, the Cubs are decimated right now. Um, and I think it's a lot of teams across the league. All these pitchers getting, you know, why is that? Is it now, they thought in the beginning the pitch clock was the thing. I really don't think that that has anything to do with it. Is it conditioning? What is it? Are they throwing more junk? Are they throwing more curveballs? Are they throwing more pitches that take a toll on an arm?
Well, you could go back to high school. Do you know that 80% of the Tommy John surgeries are performed on high school players? Then an
That
additional 15% are performed on college players. That leaves you with 5% in Major League Baseball. Now, granted, there's more high school and there's more players. Good friend of ours that we talked to, John D'Acquisto.
yeah
I was talking to John about this, and John said when the season was over, you didn't pick up a baseball until the week before Christmas. So it
yeah
gave you 60 days to rest your arm. These guys today are throwing 50 to 100 times a day, even when they're not pitching in the off season to keep their arm in shape. It's gotten so competitive, you have to throw harder, you have to throw faster, you have to throw with more finesse. I don't think these guys are giving their arm a chance to rest.
hmm
I don't know. Here's another one that's really, and
Did
we'd
John
have to bring.
did fastball John? We're talking about John D'Acquisto, who played for a number of major league teams. He was like your first multi-million-dollar pitcher per se. And did he ever have any kind of arm trouble? Did
Yeah,
you ever get into it with him?
he showed me his stitching on his arm where he had Tommy John surgery, which today would probably be considered the UCL. That's the new one. Remember, it was
Okay.
always you tear a ligament, and he had it, and that's what ended up making him a closer, reliever, long reliever, short reliever, setup guy. I guess you could just say all around bullpen arm. But he was never really able to throw as hard as he could. He thought
hmm
maybe back in the day, they did have radar guns. Were they as accurate? He was up into the high 90s. He said that he was throwing as high as 104, which he probably was. But then he realized once his arm had to be redone, he had to be a little bit more clever. So now you're starting to see a sweeper pitch and a sinker pitch and a sidearm pitch. Remember Dan Quisenberry, you got
Yep.
Rogers in San Francisco that throws basically, sidearm. Nobody throws sidearm. I used to have a
Right.
guy that was a legendary high school coach out here. He would not let any of his pitchers throw a curveball because he says it damages your arm. The stress that you are putting on your arm, you're stretching that elbow and that band. I think these guys they realize somebody younger or better might be better is coming up, and they have to stretch that arm as much as they can. Here's another thing, and we'll have to bring in some old time baseball players, pitchers. Maybe this is something we ask Brent Strom. Limiting to 100 pitches a game, basically. Do you think that's a problem? I mean, you used to see guys that would throw 115, 120,
Right.
125. They
Yep.
said by the time you threw 70 pitches, your arm was just getting started. So you're stopping them at 30 pitches because you've limited them to 100. Are they just stretching their armband out now? And now by the time you do it, it's kind of like, we're not the greatest shape guys in shape, but when you go out walking and if you skip a couple of days, do you ever notice when you go out, your legs are tight? You're not stretching your IT band. So it
Oh, for
makes you
me,
wonder if
my
these,
my hips lock up.
yeah, it might be your hips. So it
Yeah.
makes you wonder if these guys are not, they're just getting their arms started and they're being pulled and then they're not pitching again for another 4 or 5 days. Yeah, they're throwing the bullpen sessions, but I think they're just keeping their arm loose. So I
Yeah.
think it's all come down to speed, speed, speed. And now you have all these junk pitches that are coming up. It's really interesting, but I do not blame it on the pitch clock at all because you can go back to when games in the
Yeah.
60s and 70s when games were 2 hours and 20 minutes and these guys were throwing 125 pitches. Player that Fergie Jenkins was constantly throwing 100 to 125 pitches a game. Look at Nolan Ryan, Wilbur Wood, Mickey Lolich, all these guys, even into the 80s. Dwight Gooden used to throw 120 pitches a game, and he was throwing in the 90s. So
Yeah.
I just think, first off, they're probably not getting the arm rest that they need. And then number two, they have to go out and they have to compete. So, for example, look at what's happened to Merrill Kelly. He was hurt last year. Same problem he's having this year. Look at Dre Jameson. Now look at both Nelsons. Both Nelsons were dealing with elbow problems. Is it the elbow? Is it the shoulder? Is it underneath the arm? So I just think that these guys are not resting the arm enough because they have to go out. Maybe you're on a 3-game losing streak, and we'll say Merrill Kelly's going out to pitch, and he's got to show to stop that losing streak. I don't know, but that it's definitely a good point. You're seeing a lot of injuries on the arm side. But you know what?
Yeah.
You're also seeing a lot of hamstring injuries. Look what happened to Alec Thomas.
A lot of hamstring injuries.
Now, is that, are they not doing enough in spring training? You've got 6 weeks of spring training. I don't know. This is.
Yeah, but you've been to the workouts. They don't even work out anymore. They like play around. They're not like out there doing. I was looking at some old film, right? I mean, some really old baseball film of spring training. Guys were literally running through the mountains and different things. And when I go out to spring training, and I've been to many a spring training workout, the guys are just standing around. I mean, once in a while they're running and doing some drills, but they're not out there. I don't see them out there stretching and exercising. You do see that sometimes before a game, but what little does that do? It just gets them warmed up.
Remember, when you would watch spring training games, the game would be going on, and you would see a handful of guys running in the outfield during the game.
Running in the outfield, right.
Now, granted, the stadiums have gotten better in order to keep the teams and all that, and they have the conditioning areas, and they have minor league field. They call them the minor league fields, but we'll use Salt River Fields or Sloan Park as example. They have multiple fields in the back where the guys are always constantly working out. So that's where it's changed. But I'm with you. I think since they work out year round, when you see them just doing the basic simple stretches, they have already performed it. But it's interesting. Is it because technology's gotten better that they're able to diagnose it? How many guys played with the hamstring injury or the quad injury or even the arm injury? I mean, look at these guys that have had multiple knee surgeries and stuff. They just went out and they played. Now, I guess, you're making all this money and you're watching out for your future because, you're depending on baseball. This is your whole life. Where the guys back then, they had a side job. When baseball was over, you sold the cars, you sold insurance, whatever you did. Now, so you're right, but we've seen, and I think part of it is the technology's gotten better to diagnose these injuries. But, this injury with Alec Thomas, we thought, hamstring injury, it's going to keep him out for 3 or 4 games. Now we're talking about keeping him out for multiple games, a dozen games.
Right.
What are you going to do about, And that's really turned. And now the treatment that they're doing, they're injecting him. And, we're just not, look, we're not here to pick on Alec Thomas, but what we're saying is that this is an injury that could it have been prevented? We don't know. We're not doctors. We're just armchair sports people.
Right. But you're right. There have been a number of not only the arm injuries, but hamstring injuries across the league. I mean, in game number 1 for the Cubs this year, Justin Steele, and he hasn't performed the way that he should even till today. But in that first game, he got a hamstring injury, was out for about 10 days. He's come back, and he hasn't been the same. He just doesn't look the same on the mound. So he's not fully recuperated yet.
And it's everywhere. The Giants just lost a Korean superstar last night, so he's out.
Right.
He's got us the rest of the year, and I think is it a shoulder injury that he ended up having, which is another one. You're starting to see position players with shoulder injuries. So it's happening everywhere. So let me bring up the Diamondbacks a little bit because I was joking around about this 3 weeks ago. We were laughing about this. So Nelson got rocked last night. You don't know what
Yeah.
Merrill Kelly is. He's out at least until the All-Star break. Torey Lovullo said he's going to pitch this year. Jordan Montgomery, I think he's now in game shape. He pitches tonight. It'll be interesting to see what he does. Really test for him. Nelson just did not look good last night. So I said to you about 3 weeks ago, Zach Greinke is out looking for work. And they reported yesterday, Zach Greinke, guess who's working out at the Diamondbacks spring training facilities? Zach Greinke. He's throwing live batting practice to the Diamondback minor leaguers. Isn't that interesting? 40 years old. He says he still can contribute to the team, and he wouldn't mind playing baseball again. Do the Diamondbacks now look at him?
I think you should. I think you should. You're probably going to get him. I don't think I think he just wants to do it for the love of the game and show his kids that he can do it. You know, he's got a couple of younger kids, and he's not gonna demand a whole heck of a lot of money.
No, he's not. He would take. He could probably take the league minimum. So let's set it up a little bit, and then we'll talk. We'll spend the rest of the time talking MLB. When Greinke was here, he didn't pitch horrible. He didn't pitch great, but he did what he needed to do. I think it came down to the salary, and everybody said, we're paying this guy all this kind of money. You know, brings you back Madison Bumgarner. They paid him all this money. He didn't do anything. Remember way back when Russ Ortiz, Eric Burns, you're paying these guys all this amount of money. The Diamondbacks knew back then that they were struggling on having money to pay salaries. He actually went to them and said, if you want to trade me, I'm willing to accept a trade. Here's the teams I want to go to. And they did. They worked out a trade. You got Josh Rojas, you got Seth Beer, you had Corbin Mark. Now, granted, all these guys are gone, but you had to make the trade in order to get it, and he was willing to do that. He did not leave on bad terms. No. I think he still, I believe he still has a home out here. He always talked about his kids enjoyed it out here. This is something that the Diamondbacks really should consider. And I know everybody out there watching are probably going, are you nuts? There's not many pitchers out there left. And the Diamondbacks, yes, you can bring up Walston. He looked good. But is Walston going to be what you and I thought of Slade Ciccone last year or Brandon Pfaadt last year? Bring him up, got rocked. You send him down, he pitches good. You bring him up, he was okay. You send him down. You bring him up, he gets rocked. So how about an established veteran? And one thing that people forget about Zach Greinke, he's a laid-back guy. Every team that he has been on, the younger players said they have learned so much from him. Wouldn't it be nice to have somebody like him showing Slade Ciccone what to do? If you bring up a Walston, why not? How about a veteran like Jordan Montgomery and Zach Greinke sitting around talking to these young guys? How about somebody like Zach Gallen that could pick up something from a Zach Greinke? How about the bullpen that could pick up something from these guys?
You know what? A funny thought just ran through my head. Yes, I think it would be great they bring Zach Greinke back up here. But, you know, when you're talking about that, I start thinking of Strami. Strami's in his mid-70s.
Right.
Does Zach Greinke become your pitching coach next year?
You know, he's always mentioned that he wanted to stay in the game, whether it was a coach or a consultant. But you have to figure now, his kids being older, and he doesn't need any money. Why would you want to?
No, it's not money unless it's just the love of the game and you want to pass on your knowledge.
Right. And
now, why else? Unless the Diamondbacks have asked them, hey, Zach, do you want to do this? Now, I did see prior to the game, I was watching a game or pregame somehow, I don't know, and they showed Zach Greinke sitting in the outfield. And Torey Lovullo had gone up to him and was talking to him. He was actually sitting in the outfield. And so it's kind of interesting. Let's just say this. They're going to do something with Zach Greinke. And I don't know what it is, but I was only thinking Strami's mid-70s right now. I'm not sure exactly how old he is, but I think it is mid-70s. That's where I think he is.
I was talking, and Barry Enright, who left to go be the Angels pitching coach, they were grooming him to take over for Brent Strom. There was talk that Strom was going to leave last year and retire, and
Yeah.
they were just going to promote Barry Enright. They got a pretty good assistant pitching coach in Dan Carlson. So now he's learning everything from Brent Strom. It would have been a good setup to have both Enright and Carlson. So now we'll have to see if he's going to hang, if he decides to retire this year. I feel confident with Dan Carlson. But you're right. Is that something that Greg? I've seen him at the Diamondback game on a couple of occasions. So it's really interesting. So let's see what would happen. But before we go, we got about 5 minutes. The Yankees and Phillies, they're playing some great baseball. Yankees
Yep.
got the best record in baseball. Phillies are looking good. Dodgers are leading the NL West. I think they're up by, I think they're 15 games over 500. And I don't know. To me, and it's not because I'm not a Dodger fan. Everybody knows I'm not a Dodger fan. They just don't seem like they're good. But do you understand what I'm saying? They just don't seem like they're great. Is it still trying to learn everybody? I would take 15 games
I
over
think
500
so.
in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think they're still trying to learn how to play as a team, and they're learning everybody, and they've started to play now like I thought that the Dodgers would play, and just pretty much annihilate the league. And there's no way they're going to lose this division.
No.
Period. Uh, they'll probably still have over their 100-game wins. I mean, how many games are we into the season now?
40 to 45.
Yeah, probably.
There's about 120 games left.
Yeah, is there really just 100? There's 120. Wow.
Yeah, you're already at 100. Some teams have played between 40 and 45 games, so
Yeah,
162 games.
and the Diamondbacks are what, about 8 games out right now or so?
Yeah, and they're a few games under 500, and right now, look, and look, they know they're not saying it, but they already knew when the season started. They're playing for a wild card. That's what the fans need to look at, without a doubt. You got to start worrying about the Padres. You got to start worrying about the Braves. You got to start worrying about the Mets. The team Padres, or I'm sorry, the Cubs, the Brewers, which throws me into the Cubs. I'm telling you, Big Show, 5-0 with a 0.96 ERA.
Yeah, he
Justin
pitches
Steele came
today.
back. Yeah, he pitches today. But and everybody was talking about Justin Steele. It's going to take him a few games. He looked a little slow, a little tired. Get him in there. But I want to ask you, Javier Assad, 4-0 with a 1.49 ERA. The Cubs starting staff has kept this team above 500 until they start hitting the ball. Without a doubt.
Yes, that is true, but that bullpen stinks right now.
Yes, and that's
it's
why
awful. Alizé, they've taken him out of the closing role because he couldn't close a frickin' door right now. That's how bad he is. The thing is, I see they have a lot of talent. I actually on the main team, on the MLB team and down in the minors. I see a huge trade deadline moves. They're actually, there's been a lot of rumors that Bregman might, they might make a trade with Houston and get Bregman in there to shore up that third base spot, because Christopher Morel is a great hitter. He just can't feel. He can't
feel. They have already talked to the Oakland A's about getting Mason Miller, their closer. And the A's are going to blow up everybody. And the A's, as bad as everybody said they were going to be, the A's are not a bad baseball team. They're not great, but they're not horrible. And so it's real interesting. But I really like the Cubs. If they could just start hitting, and that starting staff continues, and they can go into the 6th and 7th inning, it might just make that bullpen that much better.
Yeah. The starting pitching has really been good, except for Kyle Hendricks. He's terrible. You don't ever. I don't ever want to see. I'm sorry, Kyle Hendricks has had his day. He's a World Series champion. The thing is, Kyle, look yourself in the mirror and either retire, which you won't, because you want the paycheck. Just the only reason I think you're back is for a paycheck, and you know, look yourself in the mirror and retire, or you get DFA'd. And do you want to go out DFA'd? I'd rather retire. You've got
Right.
enough frickin' money.
Okay. Well, that puts a wrap on this show. Man, this hour goes by fast, doesn't it?
It
So
does.
we're allowed to do our little rant. So join us next Saturday and we'll talk more. We're going to talk more MLB and more NFL. This is Jim, aka Basebald, signing out.
And we are off.
Right.
Okay. I'm just going to stop the record. I don't even need the recording now because